What's up, everyone? Welcome back and Happy New Year. Welcome back to the balance sheet. Very excited to talk to you guys today. A lot of amazing things happening in women's pro wrestling. Had quite a few title changes and some cool things happened to launch the new year. And this episode is also going to be the top 10 of 2024. Both Raj and I have our lists. I've probably changed mine about 50 times, the order, and I'm sure he has as well. Let's kick it off with current events. Starting with the NJPW AEW Wrestle Dynasty event last night, where we saw Mina versus Mercedes, belt versus belt, with Mercedes coming out on top and is now for Beltz Moné. Raj, what'd you think of the match?
So I enjoyed the match thoroughly. I thought they told a really good story with Mina, being somebody who uses the figure four Mina as her finishing hold. She went after the leg a lot. Um my I have a little knock with the match, and what it is and it was a great match. It was a really solid 13 and a half, 14-minute match. They were really physical with each other. They got really into it. Actually, I have two little nicks. One is it's interesting, right? Because she's going after Mercedes's leg the whole match, and every counter move Mercedes had is with her leg. So
Mhm.
you always wonder, like if they maybe could Mercedes have said, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna like not use my legs but still find a way to win this match," because everybody knows when you watch a Mercedes match, her legs, her knees are kind of her money, right? Like that's where
Yep.
she makes her money from. But that wasn't I again, I thought the match was really good. It just, as they started to really get going, it ended. And I think that match could have used like 5 more minutes. Like I
Yeah.
really thought that match could have used 5 more minutes, but nonetheless, as far as Mina Shirakawa matches go, and I've been watching a lot of just women's wrestling, just pure matches that have happened over the last 2 years. I reactivated a couple of weeks ago my Stardom World membership. For those out there listening, with the Japanese yen being very low, in terms of the market, you get now Stardom World for $6.11 American a month, which is a hell of a value
Great deal.
considering
Yeah.
all of the great matches you get. So I actually watched two Mina matches before this one, both with Mayu Iwatani, and I actually thought this match held up against both of those matches. I thought the match that Mayu and Mina had earlier this year was really good. I thought this match was equally as good, and the one reason I actually thought this match was a little bit better is in this match, I did get the sense, and Mercedes is very good at this, that she could lose. There were
Yep.
many, many times, like when they had the figure four Mina on, I think it was the second time, and it was dead in the middle of the ring. I was like, "Ooh, how is she gonna get out of this one?"
Yep.
Because Mina held her, so she couldn't really move while she had the figure four Mina on. But overall, I'm very proud of both women. I'm very happy for both women. I'm especially happy for Mercedes, not only because I've been a fan for over 10 years, but if you know her backstory, wrestling in the Tokyo Dome was probably a bigger deal to her than even main eventing WrestleMania. Because
Yep.
main eventing WrestleMania for her, as she has said, it was not a realistic goal for any woman who
Right.
came up during the Divas era, right? Which she did. I mean, she did get to see a lot of the Trish and Mickey stuff and the Trish and Lita stuff. But I mean, if you were a wrestling fan and then somebody told you in 2015, not even 2015, 2010, the two African American women would main event WrestleMania, you would have laughed at them. Because at
Yeah.
that point, two African American men never main evented WrestleMania. And guess what? They still haven't as a match.
Right.
So I think for her, the Tokyo Dome was a realistic goal because it's happened before. There's a history of many, many great women's matches inside that venue. So for her to add her
Totally
name
attainable
to,
goal. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I thought it was a really good match. Again, on those Tokyo Dome, Wrestle Dynasty, New Japan, Wrestle Kingdom cards, it's tough sometimes to get time because there's so many matches, and their style is they go from one match to the other. They don't give you any breaks. So it's like, hey, match ended, you know, Shibata Tanahashi ends 5 minutes, their little exhibition match, boom, Mercedes, you're out there. But still, uh, not if I were to rate the match, like just give you my rating, I would go three quarters to four, but I would settle on four. That would be my rating.
Yeah, no, the time is, if you pay any of our listeners who are New Japan fans, and especially um just to remind everyone, women were not on the Wrestle Kingdom card until recently with the Tam and Kyrie match. Hadn't been on for over 20 years, or they hadn't been on the Wrestle Kingdom card, right? And that was Mercedes' debut. Um, Everyone was worried about time on this card. Now, this was Wrestle Dynasty, not Wrestle Kingdom, but not quite the women's representation that we're used to seeing. Um, to your point, the match card was packed. It was a ton of matches and a ton of guys are going to get time. Kenny Omega coming back, things like that. So um, most New Japan fans that I follow seem really happy with the 14 minutes, not because 14 minutes is fantastic, but it could have been nine very easily. Um, that Tam Kyrie match was like 6 minutes, I think.
Hmm.
So everyone was very disappointed in that a couple years back. But um, a couple more minutes would have served the match well. I think it's solidly a 4.25 in my mind. I really loved the uh, tombstone inverted pile driver spot that she transitioned into the knees. Uh,
Hmm.
I know she has never done that before. Um, I've not seen anyone do it recently. I don't know if that's someone else's move, but I thought that was an awesome spot. Really, really cool spot in the middle of the match. They were very physical. She's talked about it in Monet Mag before, wrestling friends, people you're close with, and we see with Bailey and Charlotte, you lay in on some of that stuff, and they were very physical, and I thought it added to the match. So, um, Rev Pro, Rev Pro Women's Champion, um, which is a unified title with I think it's Queen of Southland,
Queen of Southside.
Southside, sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
Southside, and so she's got four belts. Um, there's a little bit of as always with Mercedes, Twitter undercurrent of, what does she need four belts for? Da 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 da. The creative control deal. Um, I think most of our listeners are well reasoned, smart people, and we'll just lay it out there for anyone who doesn't know. Her three titles is three different promoters, three different
Mhm.
men in charge, three different continents. This is not Tony cannot make her Rev Pro champion. He cannot make her NJPW Strong Women's champion. So she's got three belts because three different promoters want to do business with her. Um, I don't know how much attendance or normal Rev Pro show gets, but I would imagine they could sell a pretty sweet gate to have her come across and do a show over there. Um, Logistically, I don't know what that looks like. Obviously, Mina lost the belt on a show that was not Rev Pro, but I would assume Rev Pro is going to at least get one match out of her, so that would be really really cool. I don't see her defending the belt a ton of times. She might even lose it the first time she defends it, but just really proud. This is a woman who calls things into the universe and makes it happen. Someone anyone could look up to
Yeah.
because we should all be so hardworking and chasing your dreams because she puts it out there and then puts in the work to make it happen. So really, really awesome night.
Yeah. The Rev Pro thing is smart business. If you're the Rev Pro, you're the owners of Rev Pro, you've been growing your women's division for a bit now. And what better opportunity than, clear cut, she is, the biggest women's wrestler in the world that isn't in WWE. And, some can make the case she is the biggest women's wrestler in the world, period. It doesn't even matter if you include WWE, but obviously the WWE has a machine behind it that is ridiculous and their reach is unmatched. But back to the two C's, as I like to call it, creative control. I think we just need to set the record straight. She does
Yep.
not have creative control over her matches, outcomes, booking. She has what is called creative control in how her character is presented. So
Yep.
it's not about the wins and the losses. It's about how the aesthetic is, in terms of how she looks, how she is, cuts a promo, like things like that. Like, maybe if she needs props for her character, she gets it a part of her contract. Like, famously, if you remember Big Business, she came in a Maybach, right? And I'm pretty sure that was Tony saying, "Well, you are Mercedes Monet. Let's give you the double M Mercedes, which is the Mercedes Maybach, which is the most expensive car Mercedes makes." I'm sure that was more him, but she probably has that kind of input, like,
The carriage at All In, right?
yeah,
The
yeah,
the
yeah,
Queen's entrance. Yeah.
like that kind of thing. But she does not have the pencil. She
Right.
doesn't have the pencil because if she did, I actually believe she would lose more. I actually
Yeah.
think that she's the type of giving performer that for her, putting over somebody, losing, and, where she still comes out fine, like she has done multiple times in her career, Bailey match, Bianca match.
Bianca. Yeah.
Those are the two prime examples. She's fine in laying down and doing, as they call, the favors of the honor. She has no problem doing that. And there will be a day in this current run where she's going to go on a losing streak. That I am sure that's going to be part of the story, that she's going to get all the way up, lose, and then go on a little bit of a streak losing to build herself back up to ultimately become a babyface. I mean, we have kind of seen it in the WWE with Roman Reigns. He loses the match to Cody. Okay, oh my God, he lost first time in whatever, 4 years, 5 years, and he loses to Solo. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Solo beat him clean. No interference, just thumb, pin. Um, I think that's gonna happen with Mercedes. But right now, Mercedes is on such a heater. Every single match she has put out since the dentist and the Sheeta kind of, now I look back at those matches, I have a different opinion, right? Like when they happened, I never once thought, oh, Mercedes is finished. She can't have great matches. No. I
Right.
just thought, man, where is the Mercedes that used to be able to just take lesser talent and just carry them? I still think that Mercedes is there. I just think now I look at the other two in that situation and say, whoa, maybe they're even lesser as performers than I thought they were, because this miracle woman cannot uplift them. And I
Right.
know you have a different opinion in the sense that you think that specifically the Brit match, I don't want to spend too much time there. You think it it gets over criticized. Like you're like, it's not, I'm not saying it's best match ever, but I also think many other top tier women have had matches as bad or worse, and they don't get nearly the criticism that she did.
I will scream that from the rooftops, and I'll give you a great example. We just did our top 10 list. So I've been just like you reviewing, the top 20 matches, uh, and just trying to place everything. But I actually went a little bit deeper. I think we both did. The lack of WWE matches in this top 10 is stunning.
Mm-hmm.
Truthfully, it's stunning.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that I didn't have some sort of bias. So I tried to find the top 20 WWE universe women's matches. And so I watched matches that aren't even close to the top 10, but just like what they put
Mm-hmm.
out there, and if Britt versus Mercedes was in the WWE, it's a top 10 women's match this year. I know that sounds ridiculous. If we're talking main roster, NXT, it wouldn't be top 10, but only main roster, just for the some of the high spots alone, it's better than most of what was on the PLEs. And if you think I'm crazy, the only stuff ahead of it were like, you know, again, stip matches where, it's raised up um, just based on the stip, but it wasn't a good match. I'm not saying it was a great match, good match, but it wasn't a bad match. It was in a weird spot on the card. It certainly had some odd crowd things going on. It wasn't Mercedes' best, but it wasn't like a stinker. You know what I mean? Like they didn't go out there and like embarrass themselves.
Context matters.
Yeah,
A lot of WWE women's matches were good matches, but they were elevated by great crowds.
dude,
They were elevated by great crowds. I didn't do that exercise where I almost was seeking out WWE women's main roster matches to not have a bias. I will explain why a lot of those matches were left off and honestly not considered. I mean, the match that happened this past weekend or this past week, which was Io Sky and Lyra Valkyrie, was actually, if I were to rank WWE main roster women's matches this year, it would have been top five.
for sure.
It would have been top five. It was a really good match. And again, I watched that match in a vacuum because I just watched it, I think 2 days ago, and the crowd was so into that match. They were so into it, because it's like people are like realizing, wait, Io could lose. Like this is a real upset because her leg is giving out and she's selling it so well. And then I go back and I watch the Britt Mercedes match, and I think that was like 5 days ago. Because I'm like, maybe at the time we expected so much more, but then when you go, it's like that album that when it comes out, you love it. You don't like it because you had such high expectations, and then it's like 6 months later, something just tells you to go listen to that album again, and you're like, whoa, this is a pretty good album. Like I totally was blinded by my expectations, and I've had some albums in my life, music albums, that have done that to me. A very famous one, and the only reason I say this is because I wrote a scathing review about this album in my writing days, and it's Cameron's Purple Haze. So much so that his manager actually reached out to me and said, yo, this is hating, like you are hating on this album. And I just said to him, it just didn't appeal to me. Like I am a fan of him, a big fan of his actually, but I didn't love this album. So 6 months after I wrote the review, I was driving around in my car and I put the album in, and it just hit me in a different way where now, almost 20 years later, it's one of my favorite albums. But at the time, it was just not in the moment of understanding it. So when I went back and I watched Mercedes Britt, I was maybe hoping for something like that. As such a big Mercedes fan, it still didn't hit me.
Yeah.
But the crowd really killed that match. Like I'm being honest, like the match in a WWE setting with some of the moves they tried and experimented with would have gotten huge reactions. And I think that match would have done way better on a Monday Night Raw with a 12,000 people hot crowd. They were
Yeah.
just sitting on their hands. So to your point, it is not a it is not a overreach for you to say it could have been a top 10 WWE women's match, because again, a lot of WWE women's matches, the truth is the crowd is hot for everything. They're just hot for everything that they
They
do.
are.
So it and a hot crowd carries a wrestling match. If you don't believe me, look at how Bayley Sasha Banks Brooklyn is as a match and compare it to their Hell in a Cell match. And you can make the case the Hell in a Cell match is just as good a wrestled match as
Oh yeah.
Brooklyn. They were better workers by the time they got to Hell in a Cell, but man, that Brooklyn crowd, they were like the MVP of that match. They were the MVP. They were the show stealer of that match.
The and the commentary with the
Yeah.
crowd behind it. Here we go with the Bailey. Yeah, the whole thing. It's a whole scene, and um, I think a good crowd. Not to get too much into scoring detail, but I think it could take a point away or add a point easily. In the right circumstance.
I mean, famously, the person who's responsible for these ratings said that he took marks off for every pandemic match because there was no crowd. So it's true, because if you're rating something and everybody when you're watching it is going crazy, you get influenced by it, right? Like you get
Yeah,
influenced, like, oh wow, this is good. I actually think the Sheeta match is the bigger disappointment than the Brit match, because
yeah. Expectations were
they
high.
had a match on TV that was good. That was a good match.
Yeah,
It was a good match. And then they got a pay-per-view match where they got a little bit more time. And that match, to me, not living up to expectations, was the bigger disappointment than the Brit match, because I always was wondering how a Brit Mercedes match would work, because Brit has a style that she works that is not a conducive, like Mercedes is a chameleon. She can work any style. We know that. But I always thought it would have been difficult, like to get like the everybody always cites the Carmella match, right? Like the very, very great, underrated, underappreciated Carmella match from Extreme Rules. Everybody's like, this is the bar. Her and Britt, can they get this bar? One, I think Carmella is very underrated as a performer, and I think people just don't understand how good she is.
she
Number
is. Yep.
two, um, Carmella is somebody who's going to go out there, and I don't want to say not going to, like, I'm not saying Britt went into business for herself. I'm not making that accusation, but when I rewatched the match, there were times where I felt like, ooh, are you sandbagging here a little bit? Like, are you purposely like not selling stuff and doing it? Whereas when you watch the Carmella match, Carmella was like, "Hey, my job is to go out there and have the best match I'm capable of having, but I'm not going to win this match." And I understand there's the bigger picture.
Yeah, a little bit like you. When I rewatched that match, my revision on it is absolutely that there was something going on there because I'll just leave it at this. Mercedes lifted Chris around pretty easily for 45 minutes worth of matches over two matches. She picked her up, she pile drove her, did seven amigos, and Chris is a bigger woman than Britt is.
Mhm.
So that's my thought on that. So a little weirdness going on there. Last thing on the show last night, and we talk about Sheeta and Britt. Mercedes has been on a generational run, and it started with
Mhm.
the match you got to go see with Momo. So I was very happy to see the International Cup match. I was a little surprised actually, but Momo, very deservingly so. I was surprised because I didn't think it would happen based on the names in the match, but it was cool to see Momo win that match with Athena and Willow involved. Persephone too, right? I think was the fourth. Um, so uh, you know, I think Momo was someone who Stardom fans really expect some big things from going forward, and Hazuki, which I think we talked about last week, is now a tag team champion in Stardom. So I love seeing some of these opponents that have looked so good in the ring with her and have been such, you talk about Carmella being a great worker. Um, I love these women who um, they're not in the same company, Momo and Mercedes, Hazuki and Mercedes, but the passion we all have for women's wrestling, one of the best parts of it is having two women come together who don't work together. And
Mhm.
ego aside, Mercedes sells her ass off for them, they sell their ass off for Mercedes. So I just love seeing them have success um, after acquitting themselves very, very well on American soil, which we'll give Mercedes credit for, going to Japan, the guts it takes to go there and have a great match in Tokyo Dome. But I also think when those women are over here and acquitting themselves the way they do, it's just really great to see. It's one of the best parts of women's wrestling right now.
Momo has had a hell of a year herself.
Yeah,
And not to spoil anything, but Momo's had, she had the Mercedes match, and you'll hear it on my list. She's had an even better match after the Mercedes match with another
yep,
opponent. So Momo's
on
had a
mine too.
kill. Yeah, Momo's had a killer year. I would say that women's wrestling right now is at its, I don't want to say it's at its peak, but it's certainly in the best place it's been this century. And the reason I say that is because you're getting you're getting stories with women in the major company that is the storytelling company, which is what WWE does. And the women are super talented and have the capabilities of having great matches. I mean, they've proven that. I mean, you look at WrestleMania, Io Bailey, Becky, Rhea,
Yeah,
they had great matches. They got time, they got to tell their story. But they are getting storylines, they're getting depths, they're getting layers. And then outside of WWE, you're getting the in-ring stuff, right? You're getting the great matches. AEW, New Japan, Stardom, Rev Pro, TNA, Ring of Honor. All of these places are putting on great in-ring women's matches. And the Rev Pro thing is tremendous because she's legitimately doing the old NWA model. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, the NWA used to be a governing body of about, I don't know, I think 20, 30 territories in America. And there was like a board meeting once a year. They're like, okay, who do we want as the traveling champion? Who is the person who can come to our towns, into our territory, draw big
sell
money,
tickets.
sell tickets. Our top guy faces this person, almost beats them, but then the next time they come back, they want to see the rematch. And it was mostly Ric Flair in that time was chosen was Ric Flair. Ric Flair was what they called the traveling world, the real world champion. He would go city to city, promotion to promotion, territory to territory, carrying his belt and the big gold belt. Before that, the belt, the NWA title with the welt in it that I think Cody Rhodes has it now, but somebody has it. And he would do that. And Mercedes is doing that. She's going to go to Rev Pro. She's going to make that company a good amount of money. She's going to do good business there, probably have, and I don't think she's going to lose the first time. I think she's in her mode where she's like, look, I am the traveling champion. I am the representative of women's wrestling for the world. Yes, I'm not in the big company that has this ridiculous reach, but to every other company in the world, I am the biggest women's star. And if you put
Right.
me on on your marquee, I can help ticket sales, I can help merchandise sales, and I can bring eyeballs to your talent. Because now I'm going to look to see how I get a Rev Pro show. I don't know how to order a Rev Pro show. Like, I don't know how to do it,
I I
but
think they
I
have a
will.
subscription like Stardom, and it's a good point. This is a little bit crew 2017, 2018 when we used to have to use Google Trends to prove that
Mhm.
people cared about her because her booking sucked. Um, I would bet Google Trends for Rev Pro has a nice little spike over the last 12 hours, and that's the point, right? Um, and whoever in Rev Pro beats her, Alex Windsor or one of those talents over there, um, who I think is a former champion already, two-time, if I got that right.
Mhm.
Um, they're going to be not only they'll get a strong gate over there, but it elevates that title because one of the most famous women in the world has now held it. So it's very much a Ric Flair, Kenny Omega deal, and you know, I'm just really as a fan enjoying the ride. So you know, it's fun to see. Um, you talked about
You know,
Mel. Oh, go ahead.
No, no, no. You brought up Twitter or X, and I really wanted to touch on not the part of, oh, she has creative control, she gets so that's why she has all the belts. No, that's I don't have time for silliness because she doesn't. That's already been disproven that she has creative control. Like there, it's incorrect. What I did see a lot of though is how did this like, oh, this woman who is jobbing a lot in WWE, she's now this unbeatable force and she can't lose to anybody. Okay, this is why one, I realized how much WWE can, I don't want to say brainwash, but influence people's opinions about wrestling. Like, okay, she was booked a certain way in WWE. She still main evented WrestleMania. She's still the first woman to main event a pay-per-view in in NXT and in the main roster. So yeah, she lost a lot more in WWE for sure. And she went on a 2-year non-heater, as I'd like to say. She lost all the time. But take booking out of it, right? Booking is script.
Right.
It's a person, the person who is in charge those times clearly is a terrible just booker. Of course, he's a terrible human being, but he's a terrible booker because look at how cold the product was under his watch anyway.
Yep.
Look at the booking now compared to when it was with him. So take these individuals who book now, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Regal, put Mercedes, the talent of Mercedes, in their hands. You know what you get? 2015 Sasha Banks. That's what you would
100%.
get, right? So
Yeah.
people have to let go of the fact that because she lost a lot on WWE TV for a couple of years, that she is some job, she is, the Brooklyn Brawler being elevated to this top tier status. No, she has always been a very small handful of best women's wrestlers alive. And she's now just getting the story behind her that she has always should have had. Because I have been saying this from 2015. The easiest, simplest way to get Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks to the apex of this business is she's never going to. We're going to spend an episode one day on her promo because I think it's a very divisive,
Yeah.
polarizing topic. Is she ever going to talk you into the building like Roddy Piper? No. But I think the way that she's being presented now is absolutely the best way, which is I'm just the best women's wrestler in the world. Come beat me. And you know
Yep.
what? I don't think you can beat me because nobody can beat me. But the person who does beat her is going to be a made woman because the truth is, she is, if she's not the best, she's right there, best in the ring. And that's the story for her. I'm the best. You got to come beat the best. I have all these belts. I have all these titles. I go to your territory. I take your belt. I leave. When I come back, can you beat me? Put up your
Yep.
best. That's her story. And it should have always been her story in WWE, but they don't do stories that way. They don't do the Goldberg story. They don't do that. For them, a loss and a win, not under Triple H, but under Vince McMahon, a loss was not, who cares? It's just wins and
Go
losses.
forget
Who
next week.
cares?
Blah blah
Yeah.
blah. Yeah.
So yeah, that I just wanted to clear that up because I think it's an annoying thing I read on my timeline that folks say, hey, why is this person who lost to Sonya Deville in 2 minutes now unbeatable? Because she
Yeah.
always should have never lost to anybody in 2 minutes.
Anyone who doubts the talent she has, I'm going to give you the number 43. 43 days. And I challenge you to look at anyone's resume to see a Chris Statlander 1, Hazuki, nice little TV match with Anna Jay, Chris Statlander 2, Mina Shirakawa in the Tokyo Dome. All that happened in 43 days. You have three 4.5 star or better matches. I think this one will get, I think we talked about it's about a 4 star. It's a very good match under a lot of pressure. Being the only one-on-one women's match on the card. Um, And, you know, so four great matches with three different women who she'd never wrestled Chris before. She had wrestled Hazuki in a triple threat, and her and Mina had never wrestled before. So you're seeing the talent shine through. It's quality, the quality that she brings to the product, I think, is just unmatched. And we certainly don't mince words about Mercedes on this particular show. Um, so I want to jump into the other big change because you've been calling it and pretty much, I think, nailed the time. I'll give you credit. I think you said that this would be a show it would happen on, and it happened almost exactly the way you've been talking about it happening. But in case you guys haven't changed your clocks, it is officially Tiffy time, and I know that that's something that you were pretty excited about.
Yeah, so I am a fan of hers. I have been a fan of hers since NXT. I think she, could be the next great big women's star in that company. Um, yeah, the way they did it was one of the better cash-ins that I can remember, especially for the women's side. So I'm going to describe it. It's Nia Jax and Naomi having a really good TV match. I
Really
mean,
good
they were
match.
having a really good match. Crowd was into it. It
Crowd
was
really
hot.
wanted Naomi to win.
Yeah,
Yes.
crowd really wanted Naomi to win, which I mean, that is not a surprise. Naomi, since she's come back, has always gotten the crowd behind her and always had the crowd behind her. So Tiffany comes out, she brings her own ref. She's like, yeah, I want to cash in. Ref turns around during the bell. She pushes the ref over the barrier. And Cole and Graves played this well. They're like, what are you doing? And they looked at her. They're like, what are you doing? She waits for Candace to jump on the apron, distract the other ref, clocks Naomi with the briefcase. Nia puts her in the annihilator, 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's a ruse, Michael. This has been their plan all along, and you question their friendship. And then the master plan of Tiffany, took shape. She takes Naomi out herself. So Naomi's out of it with the briefcase. She's gone. She points at the belt. Like I don't think people realize that when Nia held the belt up, Tiffany pointed at the belt. She didn't point at Nia. She pointed at the belt. Then she goes, "Hey, go beat up Bianca. She's right there." What's so funny about that is Nia has been the boss the whole time.
Right.
And Nia would usually say, "Go beat her up." But all of a sudden, Tiffany is like, in the moment, she proved her worth to Nia. Is like, "Hey, Nia, go beat her up too." Now she's beating up Bianca. She's getting ready to do the annihilator. She goes up. Tiffany clocks her with the briefcase. Nia's just like comatose like this. Candace, like, hey, what are you doing? She throws Candace into the post, gets rid of her. Crowd's going crazy, but she rolls out of the ring smartly because Bianca doesn't see any of the Tiffany hitting her with the briefcase because she's out. Gets up, KOD, huge pop there. Finally, we got to see her carry Nia, with 4 steps with the KOD.
She got her on the flip too. That
And
was not a
Nia
cheap
sold it
KOD.
perfectly.
Yeah, she did.
Not Nia flat, perfect. Tiffany's like, okay, thanks Bianca for doing your job. Took her, threw her over the announce desk, got rid of her. Then goes to the same ref that she dumped over. Okay, I want to cash in. And the crowd went bonkers. She goes up, prettiest moonsault ever, 1, 2, 3. And Michael Cole, who is another element to why some of these WWE women's matches that when you watch it as just a match in a vacuum, it doesn't hold up to the Stardom matches, the New Japan Stardom women's matches, obviously the AEW matches. But Michael Cole is a big part of why these matches have such a bigger feel to it. He goes,
Absolutely.
it's Tiffy time with the 3 count. Boom. Then he goes, Nia Jax's Judas finally betrayed her. Great line. She gets up on the table, cheers, crowd's losing their mind for her. And then
Should
they
have closed the
pan,
show.
and then the crowd pans into, you see the Tiffy signs. And I'm like, okay. So an avid listener of this show, which is Brock, he said, hey, what is she? Is she a heel? Is she a face? Because she did both in this segment. She was a heel, costing Naomi the belt because people were booing her when she did that. And then when she beat
Right.
Nia, everybody was cheering her. I say, okay, she's going to be a babyface because somebody who gets those kind of reactions and that kind of cheers, they're not going to turn her heel. But I think she needs to keep a little bit of her edge as a babyface. I don't think she can be completely, now I don't break any rules. I'm this clean cut, all American, girl. I think she has to have a little bit of her edge, a little bit of the cheating and stuff, because that's what I think people like about her. That
Yeah.
she is arrogant and she is like, I'm better than you. And I think that's part of her, the aura. And look, I'll let you give your thoughts, but I want to give her a lot of credit for this. And I know people are going to say I'm overreacting. How many NXT women in the history of the call ups to the main roster have ever been as over as her so quickly?
Bianca's the only one I could think of. Yeah,
Uh,
Rhea and Bianca were the two. Oh,
Rhea,
if you're talking over, yeah.
but I don't think Rhea, when she first came up, was that over. I think
I
Rhea
mean,
became that with the mommy character.
I'm thinking recent time. Obviously,
Yeah.
I think all four horsewomen. It's different though. They were
Yeah.
all over as an act, but coming up on your own and having to be kind of your own thing. And I say, but yeah, I would say the we want Sasha was obviously gigantic. Um, I would say singularly though, it's Bianca and Tiffany
Sasha was more over for sure.
for
The
sure.
problem is the guy who was in charge of it killed it. He's
Right.
like, whoa, whoa, you're over. You're too over. Let's ruin this. This regime is smart enough to say, oh, we got something with Tiffany. She's getting Tiffy Time chance. She's getting cheered. She's a complete heel that people are cheering for her. Hmm. Okay. You know what? Let's not kill her. Let's put her in a prominent storyline, give her money in the bank, because the instant she cashes, she's a top baby face just like that. And that's actually what you have to do. But but the thing is, there's so many women who have come up to the main roster and gotten crickets and gotten
Yeah.
no reaction, and they're tremendous wrestlers, they're tremendous talents, but they never connected with the audience. Tiffany has connected with the main roster audience, and kudos to her for doing that. So go ahead. I
Yeah.
mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I thought the swerve was pretty cool because I was actually mad for a minute. I was like, oh my God, they're doing a fake cash in. I was mad, that that's how Naomi lost and they weren't doing a cash in. I was mad thinking how many more weeks or months is it going to be before we get this cash in? Like all those feelings hit me in that moment. I'm like, God, this was the time. So I thought it was great, a great character beat to show that edge, that manipulation, right? Um, I think my complaint, I've been waiting for that Bianca KOD for a long time, and I know her fans are pretty upset that it was used on Tiffany winning the belt. Um, for argument's sake, if Nia is never going to hold the title again in the next year, let's say, um, that was the best time to use it. I think Bianca's time is coming. That she's going to be back singles pretty sometime this year, pretty soon. Um, so originally I was like, I really wanted that to be her moment to beat Nia, but she was never going to be the one who took the belt off Nia. And what, you want to wait 3 or 4 years for it to happen when maybe she can't do it anymore? Like, who knows, right? Like, in hindsight, it was probably the best spot to use it in. That's going to get the most eyes. I think the cash in had like 12 million Instagram viewers in like the first 4 hours it was up or something like that. So for Bianca fans out there, uh, even if you wanted that moment for her own glory, that clip is going to see a lot of eyes. Um, I think I I'm a little different than you. I'm not quite ready to see. I don't know that I'm ready for Tiffany to be a long-term champion. So I could be convinced that this could be transitional. Most Money in the Bank winners, for whatever reason, have been transitional. Um, with the right match at Mania, I could expect her to lose, or she's had some great matches with Becky. And, if she starts to put together a run of quality matches, I'll be one of the first people that asks for her to keep the belt because I'm dying for a WWE Women's Champion to be putting on consistently good quality matches, dying for it. She was very good in the Naomi Bailey triple threat match as well. I mean, she's very good. So, can they transition that character now with her champion, keep it over, and let's get some good matches?
I was shocked that they used the KOD moment for that, but I'm also actually happy, and here's why. It protects the most protected finishing move in wrestling.
Yeah,
It says to you that if she hits the KOD, you're done.
it's
You're
over.
done. And I don't care
Tiffany had time to pump up the crowd. I
if you're
mean, Nia was
Carmella
out.
and
Yeah,
you're 125 pounds, or you're Nia Jax, who is the dominant, power of the women's division, you're out, you know?
yeah,
So it sets up two things. One, when Rhea Ripley kicks out of that KOD for the first time, it's going to get one of the loudest pops of all time at WrestleMania. Because that is, whether Bianca beats her or not with two KODs or three, Rhea's kicking out of one of them. That you
for
can
sure.
put that one in stone. Number two, um, a person that we have referenced on the last 3 weeks of this podcast says that Mercedes Moné is the best North American women's wrestler ever, and that at the age of 25, Tiffany is better than she was. Now, I disagree with the second part. I don't think this Tiffany is better than 25 years old Mercedes. I don't. Because 23
Not
year
Sasha
old
Banks
Mercedes,
Brooklyn. No,
yeah,
yeah,
not because 23-year-old Sasha Banks was, I thought, the best women's wrestler in the world in 2015. And I thought that she was one of the three best wrestlers in the world in 2015, male or female. I don't think Tiffany is there yet, but I do think Tiffany is capable of having a string of really good matches. And what they have done with the way she cashed in is she has made everybody in that ring an enemy. She cost Naomi the title. She used Bianca. She backstabbed Nia. She threw Candice into a post.
yeah,
So to me, I always thought her WrestleMania match would be against Charlotte. I just see them not wasting time here, saying, you know what, we need to do this. We need to have mother, daughter, whatever combo you want to call it. But I would love to see her between now and WrestleMania. If they're gonna go with Charlotte, so be it. If they're not gonna go with Charlotte, I'd like to see her have the feud with these four women. Nia, get the Nia thing done right away. Candice, Naomi, Bianca. In some range of those four women, I'd like to see Tiffany. And if you're not gonna have Charlotte beat Tiffany for the title, I would set it up where she goes through Nia, she goes through Candice. Sorry, Naomi fans. She goes through Naomi because Naomi's beaten her a bunch of times on TV, so she needs to kind of get her revenge, and then she loses that title to Bianca down the road, maybe SummerSlam.
yeah.
Because for me, I think Tiffany is very capable, but she's hot right now, and you cannot take the belt off of her right away because you might cool her off. Now, I know you're not opposed to the transition champion. If you do it in the right way, you can keep them hot. But I mean, my God, I watched that thing. I've watched that little 3.5 minute segment a bunch this week. She's super over. She is
She is.
super over.
What I'm hoping for is that um she can deliver on these pay-per-view matches, these PLE matches. Um, and I don't want to sound like I'm dogging Nia. You got Liv who's barely wrestled defending the title. On the one side, we know Liv can wrestle, but just wrestling has not been a big part of her championship reign. Nia has actually had quite a few matches. The weird thing with Nia, and I don't think it's her fault at all, she's had a bunch of really good TV matches, really, really good TV matches. The Naomi match, Michin, a lot of really good
Bailey.
stuff.
Yeah.
Bailey. And then the pay-per-view matches, for whatever reason, have been more uneven. I think the Bailey one we talked about, they tried to do too much. They like went
Hmm.
for it, and it just didn't work. But um, I would love to see Tiffany could prove a lot to me by having a show stealing title defense on a PLE. I think would be super cool. So
Yeah.
um, overall, I think Nia had one of the best years of anyone in 2024 in WWE, um, especially for someone who had been released. Um, so, I do think we should get a month of her and Tiffany, couple promos. Let's get the match done though in January, and get Tiffany kind of fighting the roster. It's been a minute since we've had a champion fighting kind of the roster, right? As a targeted woman.
I mean, right away you can have her and Candice have a great match.
That would be a
Candice
great,
is,
yeah.
because Candice
Candace
is,
can
is
go.
is one of the, best in the ring. And, Candice could get her, a 15 and a half minute match that is really, really good. And, Tiffany seems like she's very good about listening to instruction. She was in that triple threat that everybody loved with Naomi and Bailey. And she obviously was the one not calling that match. It's obviously a Bailey Naomi production. Same thing with Candice. Candice will be the one leading her, but she seems to be very good at taking direction. Look at the Becky match, which is one of my favorite matches over the last 2.5 years. Was the Becky match in Bakersfield. And Tiffany is so athletic and has so many, tools that she can have multiple styles of matches. But they got to make sure that they give her that platform. She can't go out there and have clunkers on TV or on pay-per-views, because people will be calling like, "Oh, see, you gave her the belt too soon. She's green. She
Yeah.
doesn't understand what she has." But you pivoted to, you said Liv Morgan. So I think that's a good place for us to pivot to. So, this
Yeah.
Monday night on Netflix, for the first time ever, WWE is Raw is off the USA Network since 2000. And I when did they leave to go to Spike? It was like 2001. 2001, Monday Night Raw left the USA Network to go to Spike TV, and they came back in '05. So four
Oh, five.
years they
Yeah.
were gone. Since 2005, this is 20 years they have been on Monday night on USA Network. And now for the first time, they're going to Netflix. And let's be honest, with the amount of money Netflix paid, I don't know if WWE will ever come back to the USA Network, at least Monday Night Raw. Maybe they'll just keep SmackDown going forward. But with that being said, one of the marquee matches on this show in the Inuit Dome in uh, Inglewood, California, is Liv Morgan defending her title against Rhea Ripley in what they have billed as the last time. Now,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of controversy about this match because they reported it as a last woman standing match. And then if you go, some sleuth detectives on Twitter went to the website and found that it is not listed as a woman standing match. I think it'll end up being that. It's just my gut tells me that they want to do something big. And let's get right to it. What is your prediction for that match?
I would bet a significant amount of money that Rhea is winning that match. You know, I just don't. For Rhea to lose, you would have to be convinced at this point that, you know, their dream top of card match is like Liv Bianca.
Yeah.
And it's not. Um and so this is one of those feuds. I think they love Liv Morgan. I don't want
Mhm.
to sound like they don't. I mean, she won the whatever the belt was called in Saudi, beating Naya. I think they clearly see her as one of the top of the division. I don't want to sound like I'm picking on Liv. I think she's great in the ring. I'd love for her to get to show that more often. But Rhea is uh, their top woman's one of their top two women stars, and she's probably not two. It might be a 1A, 1B
Eh,
situation, but her merch sales, her she's about as famous as anyone they have outside of the bubble. Um, and you just know she's going to win. And I don't see where the feud ending has a better spot than right here. It's already a little bit long in the tooth, truthfully. So I absolutely think Rhea's going to win. Clean, decisive. Maybe you get one more rematch, but it's kind of that decisive. Like this is they said last time though, right?
they said this the final time, like this, but this is wrestling. I
Yeah,
mean, they say final time, and then Liv could say, "Well, you never beat me. I never got my rematch." I mean, and Liv could go to one of the GMs and say, "Hey, I want it, and if I lose, I
right.
leave your show or something." They could do so many different tips with that, but yeah, Rhea's going to win. She should win
Yep.
because they do love Liv Morgan. They just don't love Liv Morgan like they love Rhea Ripley. That's all it comes
Right.
down to, right? It's not it's like, yeah, we love you, Liv. We don't love you that much. Rhea Ripley is in this weird space. I don't even say weird, it's actually good, where her aesthetic, how she carries herself, how she looks, how she presents herself on TV. I have listened to podcasts that is about music and culture, and they mentioned Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley as, man, when I used to watch wrestling as a kid, women didn't look like that. Like, whoa, like, have you seen how the
Yeah.
women look in WWE? Like we didn't get that. Like when I was a kid, Miss Elizabeth was, but she didn't look like that. So when you're starting to get your name mentioned on culture podcasts, culture podcasts that are talking about you in, hey, you got to start mentioning her as one of the hottest women in the world across all platforms, and it was
Yeah.
also for Bianca, and Jade was in that group as well. You have something that is outside the bubble.
It's appealing to the masses.
Yeah, and you got to capitalize on it. And Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley is the only women's match that WWE has in front of my eyes that can main event a WrestleMania.
Right.
That's the only one. Not Becky Charlotte, not Becky Rhea, not Charlotte Bianca. I never said, oh, Charlotte Bianca can main event. I don't think so. Because
No.
if Charlotte and Ronda Rousey couldn't do it, then I don't think why Charlotte and Bianca could do it. I do think Charlotte and Bianca should happen at a WrestleMania. Charlotte losing clean as a sheet, putting her over as, I used to be Miss WrestleMania. Now, Bianca, you're Miss WrestleMania.
Right.
But Rhea should win. Rhea should win clean. And I think Liv Morgan should be at the top of the card, on but she should be going after one of the other belts, the US
Yeah.
women's title, the Intercontinental title. And then build herself back up, because I think babyface Liv Morgan, there's a market for her. There's a
I
market for babyface Liv Morgan, and I think she can do great things there. But enough. I mean, this feud has done monster business for WWE on ratings and on YouTube views and on Instagram and on Twitter and every platform that they use to leverage has done great for this feud, except for one place, in the ring. So to both women this Monday, whatever time they give you, go out there and reprove it to everybody that these are two of the best women's wrestlers in the world, and they're going to go and have one of the best women's wrestling matches. Stip or no stip, go out there and just kill it. Yeah. Is it hard? for you to be the best match on a card with Seth Rollins versus CM Punk? Probably is. But you know what? It doesn't mean you can't try.
Yep.
Doesn't mean you can't try.
No, I hope they go for it. As with many feuds, men's and women's, if they have a great match on Monday, this feud will be remembered very, very fondly. But they need the one really good match, right? They need
Becky
it.
Trish comes to mind right off the top
Yeah,
of my head.
yeah. Um, so we got about a little bit of time left, maybe 10 minutes or so. We've been promising it for weeks now. Um, we're going to go through our top 10 matches of 2024. I do want to throw out there for any of you guys that listen weekly, we always appreciate you and we're thankful for you. Drop your top 10 in the comments. Um, I'd love to see what you guys are thinking, what you think we missed on, what you think we nailed. How do you want to do it? Do you want to name our 10, like go back and forth, your 10, my
Yeah,
10?
you do. You start number 10, I go my number 10, a
Yeah.
quick blurb on why. And then if you want to, at the end of this, we can talk about matches that missed the cut. And there is a bunch. And honestly, there's gonna be matches that I know I left off. I already look at my list. It's like I'm gonna get some heat that, hey, how did you leave that match off? But it was a very tough 10. And I have my reasons. So I'll let you kick it off. Give us your 10th
My
best women's wrestling match of the year.
my 10th best women's wrestling match of the year was Io versus Utami, Marigold. I thought, uh, you know, extremely physical match. Um, Io was really in her bag at this time of the year. She had a great year, one of the top two or three women in 2024. Um, you've talked about many, many episodes back how this was very much 2017 EO for you, and I know you love this match as well. But um, just the physicality and just the move set, just some offense you're not going to see um, very in very many places or capable by very many women. Um, I hate to sound like number 10 is a bad spot because to your point, we've got some very good matches that didn't make the cut. The only thing is you see when I go through my list, in cases of like a tie or closeness, the importance of the match and or the size of the show, placement on the card, things like that. Um, I really give a little bit of extra oomph when you execute in a big spot. And this was a fun card, um, but it wasn't like a WrestleMania card or something like that, right? It was a fun interpromotional deal that they did to kick off the Marigold thing. So I love that match.
If I wasn't sitting on a couch and I was sitting on like a high chair, I would have already fallen off because I am floored that this match on your list is that low. So that is a spoiler. It is much higher on my list, and you'll see where in a sec. So my 10th best women's wrestling match for 2024 is a match that I am probably more partial to than most, which is Bianca Belair versus Io Sky on Monday Night Raw. I think it was September 22nd in from Portland, Oregon. They got 13 and a half minutes. Um, in my opinion, it was the best TV match in women's wrestling all year.
Mm.
Meaning, when I mean TV, I'm not talking about premium live events or obviously Peacock specials or pay-per-views for AEW or even Star Gold, Marigold, Stardom, Marigold, any of those events. I'm talking about just weekly episodic TV. This is my favorite TV match of the year. It was a thrown together match because Io wanted to fight for Kyrie, and they went out there and they took the crowd and killed it. And I think what I loved about this match the most is the outcome. The commentator was setting it up the whole match. Hey, beating Bianca Belair is tough. Like
Yep.
you don't beat her. And
Great match.
Io rolled her up out of the KOD. Small packaged her 1, 2, 3, and the shock in Bianca's face of losing and the shock in Io's face of winning was perfect, even though Io has a winning record against Bianca. But okay, I digress. The point is, this was my 10th best women's wrestling match.
Okay. No, I had it as the best TV match as well. Um, I have all pay-per-view PLE matches in my 10, but I absolutely agree with you. It was the best TV match
Yeah.
this year. Why don't you go nine?
Yes, so here is my controversial list starting. Number 9 was Willow Nightingale versus Chris Statlander, All In, which was I don't know what the stip was, a street fight, right? That was the
Yeah,
stipulation. It
Chicago
was a
Street
street
Fight.
fight,
Yeah.
Chicago street fight. Okay, uh, the best women's stip match maybe ever, maybe ever. I mean, it's up there with the Becky, Sasha Banks, Bailey, Sasha Banks Hell in a Cell matches. It's up there with Charlotte, Sasha Banks Falls Count Anywhere. It's, in my opinion, definitely better than Becky's Charlotte Last Woman Standing match. This match was incredible. These two women are as physical as it gets. It brought out edge in Willow that I thought her character needed, that she can get vicious and she can get nasty. And I think this energized Chris. I mean, Chris Statlander has always been one of the better women's wrestlers in the ring. And I thought this match kind of reinforced that message. This was a great match. And the way you talk about, hey, crowds and scope a card and all this, I look at stip matches are a little easier to perform in because you have more available to you. But then nonetheless, this was a great match. And um, I think it was a good blow off to their feud. My only knock is I think the wrong person won.
Yeah. So it's funny you said controversy. I'll just jump right into it. That was my number nine as well.
Mm,
So
okay.
um, I had it as high as six on one of my. At one point, I had it as high as number six. Um, the wrong person won. Um, and even though Chris went on to have two great matches with Mercedes, they didn't do that. They didn't do the face turn. They didn't do any of that right in between. So I think, you know, if we just took our feelings the night each one of these matches had happened, it might have ranked higher. But what they did after maybe spoiled it a little bit for me. And I also, again, I've said this a million times. I rank stip matches. Um, if it's even, then the non-stip is going to get the bump. So I have it number nine as well, for a lot of the same reasons you mentioned. And it's funny. I'm going to jump into my number eight, and I'm amazed it's this low because when it happened, I thought it was the top. It was it was the best or second best women's match of the year at the time that it happened. But I have Mercedes versus Willow at Double or Nothing is my number eight match, and it just speaks to the quality of women's wrestling this year that was the eighth best match on my list. Obviously, I could easily be accused of being biased towards Mercedes. Um, I think Sports Illustrated had this one ranked number four, but ultimately for me it was number eight. Um, through no fault of its own, just seven great matches in front of it. And I tried to widen my horizons for this list a little bit, and I did some research, which there's two matches that snuck in front of this that I did not watch live. I'm not going to pretend I watched them live, but in my study of the year,
Mm.
um, they came up on the list. And but about this match, Mercedes' first match back in over a year. Thought the crowd was great. It was actually one of the better crowds she's had for an AEW match. I love Willow. Um, this was one of those where if if the circumstances weren't that Mercedes was coming back and was the big free agent signing, just from a story standpoint, you could have loved to see Willow win this match, even though it wasn't going to
Yeah.
happen. But just a fantastic match with two women, just with as much charisma as you have in the game.
So we're at number Eight.
Eight. Yep.
Before I get to my number eight, Mercedes Willow was my number 11 match. It was 11.
Okay.
So it didn't make my list simply because I thought the outcome was never in doubt. And that does taint a match for me going into it. Like when I know it's 100% Mercedes is winning, unless something happened where she, glad it
Yeah.
didn't happen, where she got hurt and called this switch on the fly. But that was the one thing. It was still a great match. It kind of set the stage for the year Mercedes would end up having, and actually Willow having as well. Willow is one of the top women's wrestlers in the world. There's a lot of money in a Willow AEW Women's Heavyweight Champion babyface run. The crowd loves her. The crowd has always loved her. She has never not delivered in the ring. I think she's been booked weirdly for how popular she is, but that's not her fault. She's a
Yep.
tremendous talent. Mercedes is Mercedes. Number eight, Mayu Iwatani versus Suri. Stardom Gate. Again, a match I did not watch live, but when I reactivated my Stardom World membership and I went back and I watched all these women's matches back to back to back, this match was a banger. Um,
Yep.
I might have the minutes wrong. I think they got like 24 and a half minutes. Um, and this was a match that I wasn't expecting to be as good as it ended up being. But these two women beat the crap out of each other. And if you ever watch a Mayu Iwatani match, Mayu's for being a slender woman, she is a physical
Yep.
woman. She kicks hard, she punches hard, she suplexes very hard, she takes crazy bumps, she gives out crazy bumps. This is no different. This is, when we do Wrestler of the Year next week, spoiler alert, Maya has a really good case for being number one. I haven't done my list yet. I will do it, but this was one of the best women's matches this year. And Mayu has been just on her game this year. So this is my number eight match.
Spoiler, I have it on my list coming up in a little bit. It's a great match. So I'll talk about it when we get to that. Number seven, your go.
Ah, number seven, part two, Mercedes Monet, Chris Statlander, World's End. At the time when I watched part two, I thought it was better than part one. As I rewatched both of them, I give part one the slight edge. Because in part one, I did not know Mercedes was going to win that match. I got the sense in part two she was going to win very quickly because you don't do the rematch so quickly to beat a person who's been unbeatable. So after really watching both matches back to back, I also thought the psychology in part one was a little bit better. I thought they did some different stuff in part two that was great. And I love part two, which is why part two on my list is lower than part one. But I mean, there's nothing left to say about this match that we haven't already discussed, on last week's pod. This match is great. I mean, the women brought it again, and
Yep.
they got a crowd that was not hot at the beginning of this match to where they were as hot for anything on that card besides Okada Osprey at the end. So
Yep.
kudos to them. It is my number seven match.
All right. Um, my number seven match, you just brought her up. Um, I have Mayu Iwatani versus Momo. Um, really, really enjoyed that match. Mayu, she wrestles like the Terminator.
Mm-hmm.
She's just, and I think, her matches don't always have US commentary. So, you know, some of the time, or maybe her older matches, I think this one did, but, you know, she's just, she's booked this way. For those who aren't familiar, um, when Mercedes wrestled Mayu, um, I think a lot of us were hoping, thinking Mercedes was going to win. You know, it was only her fourth match back, but I think most Japanese wrestling fans would have told you that, you know, Mayu rarely loses. But what I love about this match, and I had an invested interest in Momo um, after her match with Mercedes, so it was very easy to get into this one. Um, and I just really enjoyed it. Um, they're both very, very physical, very, very skilled at what they do, and I really enjoyed it. And actually, I ranked. I'll spoil it and say I have the Suri match higher than this. I have it on my list, but that's more like technical grading. I enjoyed this match more from a like just what I like.
Mhm. So is it you for number six?
It is me for number six. So this might be controversial, um, but this match um, made it this high on my list because it happened at a very important show, and it was a proper cap to one of the number one TV time feuds in women's wrestling for the year. So I have Mariah May versus Toni Storm at All In. I thought the match was very, very good. If we're just in a vacuum, was it better than some of the matches that I listed? Probably not. But um, I think when you're capping a feud that had the most, you know, story and TV time of maybe any AEW women's feud prior, certainly was up there. If you count all the time that they were united, it's the longest story told in women's AEW history. If you count the time that they were um, on this, you know, on the same side, and then the turn and everything. So um, you have to have, just like we talked about with Liv and Rhea, you have to have a good match in there, and they delivered. Mariah delivered a really good match. It was the best women's card on the match. It was a much better match than Mercedes and Britt. I thought the crowd was very much into it. They told a good story. It was very physical, and so I think on that stage, I had to give it credit at number six.
This specific match you're talking about is my number 15 match. It did not make my list, but that's a good way to look at it, that it culminated what was probably the AEW feud of the year.
Yeah,
Number six for me is a woman we've already mentioned multiple times, Mayu Iwatani versus Saray, Stardom All-Star Grand Queendom.
I think you had Saray already.
I had Mayu versus Siri, not
Oh,
Saray.
got it.
So
I heard you
your
wrong.
Mayu is against Saray, the
Yes,
one you're gonna be okay.
yes,
So
yeah.
just to clarify, my number 8 match is Mayu Iotani against Syrui.
I heard you wrong. Yep,
My number 6 match is Mayu versus Saree, Saray, who was formerly in NXT.
yep,
So this was my number 6 match of the year, and again, it goes into sometimes quality is better than quantity. Mayu Iwatani had 4 singles matches this year, and all 4 were exquisite matches. This is not the highest ranking Mayu match I have, so you probably know what is going to be the highest one because you've already discussed it. But
yep.
speaking of women who've had unbelievable 2024s, Saray, she had a hell of a match with Julia in Marigold, and that was number 12 on my list. So this match is, again, this is a Mayu Iwatani special. She, you know, the phrase that you use for Mayu is zombie Mayu. Like that's how
Yeah,
she wrestles, right? Like she takes a beating, she gets up, she gives a beating, you know, she wins with the dragon suplex at the end. She'll give you the tombstone. She'll give you one of the crazier tope suicidas that anybody does in wrestling. She has one of the best off the top rope drop kicks. I mean, I could go on and on about Mayu, who I could make the case, you know, if it's not Mercedes and if it's not Io, Mayu Iwatani the best women's wrestler in the world, and I can make the case she's the most gifted because she makes everything look so easy. And I think that's actually sometimes what is a detriment to her, that she
Yeah.
does make it look so easy. So it's my number 6 match.
Okay. You're number 5.
Ah, part one of the two-part classic with Mercedes versus Chris. Part one was at Full Gear. The reason I have part one higher than part two, I just didn't think that I knew they would have a good match. I didn't think they could have that good of a match. That match, and you go back to when it happened, the night it happened. It was like, damn it, this is the Mercedes we knew she could be, right? Like
Oh,
this, like the Momo match was great, and that was also one of my honorable mentions. And this is a match I actually attended personally, but the Chris match was unbelievable. They had me 15 different times in that match where I thought Chris was going to win.
yeah.
Like the way she kept teasing Saturday night, Saturday night special, and she didn't get it, she didn't get it. And finally, I'm like, oh, here it is. Mercedes is going to lose. And she didn't. And so many times I thought Chris was going to win. Like the frog splash into the F5, which is the reverse Brock Lesnar Eddie Guerrero spot, was phenomenal. Had me hook, line, and sinker. I thought it was over. So, yeah, I just think this is one of the best women's wrestling matches of the year, and it was my number 5.
Yep. I love that match, and I have it further up my list. For my number 5, we've kind of talked about it a lot. You just talked about it, and we talked about it last week. But I have Mercedes versus Chris number 2. I did not get to watch this match live, as you guys know. I was at
Mm-hmm.
the Rams game, so I kind of spammed it 3 times in 12 hours after that because I watched it, in bed on a phone. Um, at 12 o'clock at night. Um, and then I watched it on my computer uh, that next morning. And then I watched it on a TV. So in the moment that night, like if you would have pulled me right when I went to bed, I did think it was better than number one. But uh, on the rewatch, I have one ranked higher as well. So that's my number 5. My number 4 is a match you just talked about. It's my favorite Mayu match of the year, which was her one versus Sari. I just thought it was an incredibly physical, high level, like two grandmasters kind of wrestling each other. Um, that also it ranked ahead of the Momo match for me because All Star Grand Queendom is their it's the top stardom show, right? So I did take setting into account on that one. I do think that that's the number one rated women's match of the year on Cage Match. Uh, Last I looked, Hazuki versus Mercedes had just fallen under it as far as fan rating goes. So obviously, it's one a lot of people out there love, and I did as well. I didn't watch it live, and um, uh, I've been watching a lot of Mayu the last 2 weeks to make sure that I did her justice on this list. And if you're not familiar with Mayu, if you're a North American fan, and more so WWE, AEW, do yourself a favor and watch and enjoy some Mayu matches. She really is fantastic, as good as advertised, and probably makes it look so easy that it might hurt her actually how easy she makes it look. Like you said.
Yeah,
So
I think it does. So now this one, this is these last four were very tough for me. I probably lost a lot of sleep over this specific one being number 4. Because for a long time it was my number 1.
yeah,
EO versus Bailey WrestleMania 40 is my number 4 women's match of the year. For a long time, I didn't think it could be passed as the number 1 match, but as I rewatched all these matches together, again, this match is the perfect This is what WWE should be striving for on every one of their premium live events with their women's matches. This match, they got the story part perfect up to the Mania match, right? How EO got the belt, how EO started to talk about Bailey, backstabber. How Bailey, for once, was a smart babyface, saw it coming, was prepared for it, outsmarted them, challenged the EO. The build up, but the build up to that match, it kind of got hot and then they cooled it off for no apparent reason. And the only thing that hurts this match, in my opinion, is the follow up that we never got.
Yeah.
And of these two women, after this match happened, EO became the hotter entity. And they really didn't do much with Bailey. So
Right.
I will rate this as number 4. But if you put it at number 1, I'm not gonna get mad about it. It was my number 1 for a long time. So that's my number 4 match.
Okay. Number 3 is to you.
Oh, okay. So number 3 is a match you've already discussed, which is Mayu Iwatani versus Momo at Historic X Over. I think that's what the event is, part 2, which is the New Japan Stardom kind of cross
Yeah.
promoted event. I love this match. I think it's the best of Momo. I think it's almost the best of Mayu. These women beat each other to a pulp, and they almost got 40 minutes, and that's a long time. And to hold my interest for 40 minutes, that says a lot. I thought Momo was actually going to win this match. This is the only match Mayu wrestled this year where I thought she was going to lose. Because again, as you, if you are a Stardom women's wrestling fan and you're a Mayu Iwatani fan, she is the icon of Stardom. She does not lose that much.
Right.
And I thought this was the match because Momo has gotten her a couple of times in previous years, and Momo has never gotten the big belt. So I thought at some point they're going to have to give it to her. I thought this was the match. This match was tremendous. I love this match. I love the physicality of it. And I loved how she kicked out of Mayu's finishing hold a couple of different
Yeah.
times, which threw me off. So this is my number 3 match.
Interesting. I think looking at my list, I'm almost certain I don't have one of your top 2 matches on my list. So it's funny as like um, as much as we're usually in sync on this show, but that's what's great about women's wrestling is.
I'm going to tell you, you do have both of them.
Oh, do
You
I?
do have both.
Okay
Yeah,
then.
you do. You do. Mhm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know which one then. My number 3 is Mercedes versus Chris. Um, one talked about it a lot. Uh, I think the I think the desperation, the psychology surpasses the second one. Um, biting the knee when she was about to be finished, and just that whole sequence, um, and it's just very fresh, right? It's a great
Mhm.
rewatch, and they really stole the show, as we like to always say. So, um, in most years, that could easily be the number one, match for the year. I felt like number 2. You just talked about it. I had Io versus Bailey at WrestleMania. I had that match at number 1 for quite a while for the year, just like you did. And I think it's like a Oscar movie, right? Like if a movie comes out at the wrong time, by the time the Oscars come around, you forget about it and it doesn't win. Uh, for those that don't know, people release movies at certain times of the year to generate Oscar buzz. I think that happening in April, uh, makes you kind of forget about everything that went into that. How long the feud was, how well done the feud was, Bailey winning the Royal Rumble, um, and then that match delivering. And I said it earlier, if you deliver on the biggest stage, I'm going to give you credit for that. And it was the best women's WrestleMania match, one of the best women's WrestleMania matches ever. So I felt like the bonus points of great feud, great match to cap the feud on the biggest stage possible. That was my number 2.
So my number 2 match is a match that you had at number 9,
Mm,
which is Io Shirai, Io Sky versus Utami. And I am probably a prisoner of not the moment, a prisoner of nostalgia on why this is my number two match. You know, I am in the last 10 years, if I were to rank my women's wrestlers in terms of favorites, and I mean it's Sasha Banks, Mercedes, Io, Becky, Mayu, maybe Bianca. I don't know, would be my five. But I have wanted this Io Sky, Io Shirai in WWE. From the moment she got into WWE, I thought they told her to tone it down. And
Mhm.
they do because they have a style they want you to work. And Io, to her credit, has mastered that style. She's become very good at it. But this match harkened back to the when you could only get stardom via those those as they call gray streams, where you could only
Yeah,
get stardom where somebody would post it on YouTube for a bit and then it gets taken down. And it's like, oh, Io's wrestling. I got to figure out how to watch it. That is what this match represented to me. It was a nostalgia match because I got to see the Japanese Joshi, queen of stardom, Io Shirai. And for that only reason is why this is my number two match. Because the story isn't as good as the Bailey Io match. The story isn't even as good as Momo Mayu. But just that I got Io in her element one night only, it's my
yeah,
number two match.
fair. So we both have the same number one.
Yes, the number one match, I think, for both of us is going to be Mercedes Monet, Hazuki at what is the paper? What is it even called?
Strong style evolved.
Strong Style Evolved in the Long Beach Pyramid.
Yep,
This was simply the best wrestling match of 2024.
yep.
Not male, not female. The best
The
women's
best
wrestling
match.
match. No, the best wrestling match of 2024. That's it. We have spent multiple shows on this match. There's nothing else that needs to be said. It is the best match. Period.
Yep. I'll add that as we I'll just add to it. I thought it's a main event on a male dominated event card and the best wrestled match back in the arena where Mercedes' injury originally happened. So a lot of pressure on her there, and a lot of personal pressure. So delivered in the biggest moment, and nothing much more needs to be said. It was also Sports Illustrated's number one match, and I'd love to see them go at it again at some point. Hopefully, it's raised Suzuki's profile as well. Um, as should for the great wrestler that she is. So, um, Mercedes versus Suzuki, almost unanimous, I think, in many circles, as the top match of the year.
I would agree. It deserves it. And I think we have come to the end of
Yep,
this week's balance sheet. And, before we break for this week and we come back next week, and I mean this, I want to wish your Lions luck. Good luck today.
thanks.
This is the biggest regular season game, I think, since I've started watching football. This is the
Yeah,
biggest regular season game at the end of the year I could ever think of because this is for as big as stakes as you can have in regular season, right? It's either
yeah.
number one seed, home field, or you might have to
Three
go
road games in the playoffs.
three
Yeah,
three road
to make the
games.
Super Bowl.
Yeah. So good luck.
Appreciate it. No, I'm nervous. I'm excited. Actually, my dad, my parents are staying the night tonight because the game will be on late, and we're
Yeah.
gonna watch it together. So go Lions. Appreciate everyone out there listening. And again, give us your guys' top 10 in the comment section.
Yes. Please do that. And we look forward to talking to you next week with possibly two new women's wrestling champions as the WWE has both of their belts on the line, and most people expect them to be new champions. So we'll see what happens.
Yep. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.